Hey everyone, you're here at Archer's Garage, and I'm here to show you, well, what not to do when you're going to store your snapper at the end of the year. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and what I do, what I generally do, and what I recommend to do. Some simple stuff to store your machine for the winter and put it away. At least, give it a shot, right? Try to put it away nice. But one thing you don't want to do is what I've been doing. And I'm just for some reason or another, I'm just not disciplined enough to do this. So let's take a look, and I'll show you in this episode again what to do, and of course, what not to do. I gotta go clean up a mess. I'll see you guys in a minute. Do you guys know Superclean makes a really good floor absorbent? They sent this to me a little while ago, and I just used it to clean up the mess I just made, and several others. Check it out. You can get it on Amazon, number of places. Check out their Store Locator. I will leave that information in the description.
It's not going anywhere.
It's gonna go.
Oh.
That's it. Come on.
How do I? It's going backwards. Oh, come on.
Let me give you a little back history of what we're working with here. So this is a machine that's been on the channel a number of times. I got the blade off because I think I need another blade. It's vibrating a bit, so that's the time to consider your blade and what condition it's in. Take a good look at it. Now, my blade's vibrating a little bit, so I think I'm just going to change it out. It's getting a little old. So that's one of the things you're going to want to take a look at. And of course, cleaning, right? Now, this has been around for a while. This machine's been on the channel for a while, and I've had it for a while. I don't remember how long. And I've been slowly working on it. It still needs some more work. In fact, I was hoping to do some more work to it this season, but I never got around to it. So I stored it here at the beginning of the season for the duration. We're at the end of the year, at the end of the season, getting ready for winter. And I got a nice day, and I figured I'd come out and do a bit of work. And one of the mistakes I make with this is I don't drain the oil. Now I'm going to put this thing on all fours and we'll take a look, and I'll get you in, and you can see the mess it's making. It does need a new bushing, and that is something that you can pick up, but that depends upon the motor. We'll take a look at this because not every bushing, see, some of the oil dipsticks go in with an O-ring and others go in with something more like akin to a grommet or some kind of a rubber bushing, and that's what seals it. I even tried putting some RTV around it, but no, it's going to need a little bit more than that. Let me get down on all fours and we'll get in there and we'll take a peek and we'll get started with the video. I'll see you in a minute. Now here's the grommet area, and what I did was I actually put some RTV around this. It's kind of like an O-ring, but I added an O-ring to it, but it's really more of a grommet. Hopefully you can see that. But where is it leaking? It's leaking from here. And that's another place where it will leak from, depending upon the model again. And this one should have a seal or something, or maybe even an O-ring in it. I don't know. But that's something we're going to look at in the very near future, but not right now. So I have to see how much oil is left in it. Probably almost all of it came out. But the machine overall is in excellent shape. Now this may seem obvious, but it's not. And my shed is pretty far away. While I have it here in the garage, now's a good time to check the air pressure. You may not have checked it over the summer and over the season, but this will give me an idea if it's leaking or not. Now these tires, this one here, the back tire, is very common. Probably about 12 psi is what we want, and we're low. We're about 6 or 7. I do have another gauge too. You have these little shorty gauges, which are nice because they can kind of get in. Sometimes these things are in weird locations. So I'm about 6-7 pounds. So we want to get it up to 12. And if it's a slow leak, you could put some stop leak in of some kind. That should be good. And that'll give you an idea of what kind of condition your tires are in. So of course, clean your machine, give it a hosing, pressure washer, a light wash. Get the debris out, especially around the deck. Like this deck has a lot of like surface rust on it, but it's in good shape overall. You can see, it's clean, but you see the surface rust. That's because it wasn't well cared for when I got it, and I eventually will paint that and derust it. I've already started. I've removed some of the rust and the paint that's flaking. You want to get that kind of stuff off, especially. And they sell plenty of different types of paints. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I have a series on Paintucation. I use an implement paint by Rust-Oleum, and it works very well. But something like this, I would want to wire wheel it, treat it with a little bit of my body acid, and I could bring it back to, in fact, that'll actually take off all the rust if I really wanted to keep working at it. But mostly stabilize everything and just give everything a good check. I use Flat Out, and there's different versions of this product. This one is actually made for like small engines, that kind of thing. They make a version for more like ATVs, and that's thicker. It's designed for like big punctures, whereas this one is designed more for small equipment that has pneumatic tires, because you're not necessarily going to get a big puncture. You're just going to get an older tire that gets a little leaky, maybe a little bit around the bead. The tire's getting a little, worn, and it'll start to leak. Something like this will work well. All right, so I got the battery out, which is important. Depending upon what kind of battery, and we'll talk about that more later on, but depending upon what kind of battery, you can store them a little bit longer in a vertical position. But the manual basically says 2 hours. So for example, if you wanted to work on the blade or something, you could put it up on its butt and work on the blade, clean the blade, replace it. But anything more than 2 hours, especially if it's just a standard lead acid battery or not an AGM. Now this gas cap is unique, I guess, in a sense. Now this machine and some of the older models, this actually has a little thing you can twist off here, and it's actually locked down right now. You want to make sure that that is up, that you turn it and loosen it. See, I can't loosen it right now. But you want to loosen it when you're driving the machine around. But if you're going to store it, you tighten this up, and it kind of seals off the vent. If you forget to do that, your motor will run for a little while, but it'll pull a vacuum inside of here, depending on how much fuel you have, and it'll stall. Now I've got a fuel filter, and I also have a fuel shutoff switch here. So just in case, a good thing to do would be maybe put some type of a fuel stabilizer in, run around for a little while. If you've had to put any stop leak into your tires, you're going to need to run it around for a little while before you store it, because it's got to slop everywhere. And then if you haven't leaked out all the oil, well, you got to replace that. And then throw the switch, install one if you don't have one, and then let it run until the carburetor is out of fuel. Another trick is you can put a little two-stroke in your gas, or run it on a little bit of two-stroke, and that'll help protect the engine and the carburetor. But you're going to want to close this fuel shutoff here, and try not to put too much fuel in. Get the fuel out however you can. You really don't ever want to store it with a full tank of gas, and if possible, you don't want any gas in it if you're going to store it. Now this model is a little older, right, and it's got a 10 horsepower on it here. They're not all like that. This is a flathead. Many of them are overhead valve. So there are certain things that, a lot of things were changed over the years, so this is more generic type of walkthrough and tips. Another thing I like to do is like to put a little oil over here on top of the Bendix, make sure it's clean, especially if you've cleaned it. You're going to want to do things like that, anything exposed, and go through your lubrication routines, which I'll show you in this episode. All right, let's take a quick look at the batteries, right? Some simple battery talk here, real quick. So you got the one on the right? So I got 3 batteries I pulled out. It's standard lead acid style battery, and the newer ones are sealed. And so that's why if you're looking at the one on the right, what is it, like 230 cold cranking amps? They make bigger ones. Honestly, the bigger the better, but a lot of people just go to Walmart or whatever. They don't last as long, and one of the reasons why they don't last as long is because they have this sort of sealing thing in there, and some of them are even sort of gel, but you can't rehydrate them, and so they don't last as long. So you're not going to be able to milk it. So you want to keep it charged. In fact, you know what? Let me go get this thing. Hold on. Oh, I almost forgot, right? because I wanted to show you this, right? Just as a reminder. Now, my friend Liz gave me this a while ago. Is there even a name on it? I don't know if there's a name on it. It kind of fell apart a little bit, but this is like Centec, right? Centec. Han Quang. I don't know. You know what? Eastwood used to sells these. They've been hawking them for years. They're battery tender, battery minders, whatever you... Believe it or not, right, if your battery is not absolutely dead and you killed it, right, if it's not absolutely dead, if you can leave, like especially the better ones, you can leave them on, take the battery out, all right, at the end of the year, at the end of the season, and leave it on charge. Stick it in your garage or whatever, and just leave it on. It'll mind it. That's the biggest killer of batteries, is that once a lead acid battery goes down to like 50% or certainly below 50, if this ever gets below 50% on its charge rate, you killed it. Usually one cell's dead. You're done. Right? Yeah, you can hook a welder up to it. And I see all these guys. I've tried some of that stuff. It's mostly, if you kill a battery, it's dead. But this will help it out. And of course, put it on, like in the spring, put one of these back on, because you probably don't have to leave it on all year. But if you're going to put it down, don't put it down on the concrete, put it down on a piece of wood, because yes, there is some truth to it discharging on concrete, especially if it's dirty and it's has precipitate on it or whatever. Clean off the battery, just wipe it down, put a piece of wood underneath it, right? Just make me happy, okay? Do something for me, for Arch, because I said so. And put it on charge, and the same thing, put it on charge for about a week before you shove it back in the mower again at the beginning of the year, if you just really want to be reluctant. And I know a lot of guys will say, well, I got a good charger. I don't know, these work pretty good. I got some chargers too, including one that I made, and that'll boil a battery. So if you're talking about like a standard lead acid or any one of these batteries, that thing works really good. I have definitely pulled back to life some batteries as well. You just got to leave it for days. So that's one thing, charge your battery up. The lead acids are good. Like I said, they're sealed. So that's when I said like 2 hours uptime. Those batteries can handle it because they won't really leak out. But you will saturate the membrane. There's an area where it has to breathe, and it's got a bit of valving in there, and you'll saturate it. And then eventually it'll leak out. And you don't really want to saturate that area because it'll clog up. And then it won't breathe, and then you could potentially have a problem. The AGM on the far left is a great replacement for a lot of these. They're very good. They used to be about $40, $50 or $40 or so. I haven't checked. I don't think they're really all that expensive, honestly. Most of them, take your pick. There's a lot of manufacturers out there. This is a lawnmower. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's not like the space shuttle, like everybody else says. And I think Bruce started that, and Terrell picked it up. And then the motorcycle battery, which is just about the same size. If you look at it closely, the terminals it's the same height as the terminal, so it should fit in there. But it's tall, but it's narrower, and they put out a lot of power. I forgot to look what the specs are. If I look at it, I might put it in here somewhere. But they put out a lot of power. So that's an alternative too, and it's actually a better battery than the Walmart. You will pay more for it. But, a lot of these, they sort of last better. There are batteries, too, that can deep cycle a little bit more. When you put the battery in or before you take it out, if you get a cheap voltmeter, run your engine to the proper, speed, not idle, but the proper speed, and take a reading, and it should be a little over 14 volts, 13, 14 volts. And that means that your charging system is working properly. If you're killing batteries, it could be because you blew something out, and that's another story. I did some electrical work on one of these. That's a separate video. And of course, the AGMs, right? Like I said, they're really dynamite. I've put them in places where, because the battery is smaller, it can fit in certain areas on certain machines, and I like that. And there are some machines that really only want a smaller battery, and what a lot of times what I'll see for some of these machines, not snappers, but for some of these machines, they really are underpowered with the battery technology that was in there originally, and the AGMs put out a lot of power. All right, that's enough for tech talk on that. I just wanted to run that past you fellas, just, everybody, so you kind of, just so I covered it. There's a lot to cover, and I don't want to get too involved in this video because I have other videos on getting deeper into different aspects of this machine. So check the folder out, and let's see if you find something that you like. So I got some lube in there because you can actually get some chain wax into that. It'll flow in. That's what I like about it. So we got points here, here. You've got there's a bushing there, but don't spray any deeper than that because you may not be able to see it, but there's a break up in there. So you just want that clean. And we've already lubricated from underneath. Here, I got one spot. Hold on, I got to get to down there. So I got to get there. This plate, because it moves. These on both sides, of course, the cable. Did I get to that already? Yeah. So just to try to tally up. So I want to do the one down there, and I just want to put a little bit more on this, which I think I lubricated already. Of course, you got this there. We can put a little cable lube on this cable just to protect it. Look at that. We already did the other bushings. We can put a little bit in there. Same thing on this side. That. Like I said, we already got that. There. And I was telling you earlier, this whole bushing assembly with that spring in there. Just to cover that again. I want to get a little bit more on this cable and also on this. We did the electrical already. This swivels. And I think that's it, fellas. Let me finish up with that, and I'll put some fuel in it. Oh, I also got some up in here because this moves. Like anything that moves, guys. Maybe I'll put a little bit on the slider here, just so it slides a little bit better. And I think that's it. If you wanted to, you could put a little bit on this bar here. Remember, this stuff dries, so it will lay a protective coating and stop rust. Now, in this unit, fellas, if you look here, right, you see this one has the full tube design. What that is that in this back section, where the transmission is, here in this mount, there's a bushing and a full tube. And that spins, right? It rotates. So we need to get, while we're up like this, I'm going to put some oil in this area and let it drain down into that tube. If yours, and I'll show you a little bit more about it when I have it in a more comfortable position, but if yours, whether yours is like that or the split design, which we'll take a quick peek over at the other machine, we need to get lubricant in it, especially this one, because that upper tube, right, is designed to turn kind of like, not so much like a suspension, but to keep the wheels parallel on the ground. That will lock up. So let me walk around the other side, get the other side. I've been squirting it with oil on both ends for, you know, a better part of this week as I've been working on it. But while you're storing it and servicing it, make sure that's lubricated. If you ever have it apart, and some people say they can't get it apart, it gets rust welded. There's not a lot of light here, fellas, but this is a slightly different design. Very similar, okay. This one also is the tube design. It's just a little different, a little older. And we want to get, while we can get that oil in there, all right, I can't get it from the other side, but while it's up, I'm going to squirt some from the other side as well. And I don't have one with that design I'm referring to, but yeah, we want to make sure that's moving. Now, of course, earlier I said, you know, the whole, trying to get to the whole steering mechanism, but when it's down, if you can see it, but you want to get inside those bushings there. Those are plastic bushings, and you got to keep them clean and lubricated maybe once a year, and they'll last you a long time. If not, they'll wear out. You got to get new ones. So I got the cable, I got a bunch of other things. Also inside there, there's a spring mechanism for this brake lever. You want to keep that clean. Don't forget, fellas, I've been telling you earlier that, right, every time I get a chance, put some more lube there. I got this, and also this slider. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but this whole slider mechanism I coated, and the end of the cable, and make sure it's clean, because that's your governor, and it's also from behind, fellas, it's also your throttle and choke control, so we want that. All right, I think that's it. I don't know, I'm just trying to make sure I hit all those points with you guys. All right, fellas, so what you're seeing here is actually two different machines, and because like I said, I work on these too. So in this next segment, I've got the cover off, so you got to take those plastic covers off and get in there and clean out everything. clean the whole machine, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Now, what happened to this machine is the spindle area was like the brake and spindle area that I'm going to show you and I'm working on here, got locked up pretty bad. There was a number of things that got locked up on this machine because it was left to sit and it was all full of gack and it got jammed up. Now, I had to spray a lot of penetrant lube. I described, taking off the sort of idler tensioner pulley, and I probably got a little bit of lube on the brake system. But if you maintain it regularly, you won't go through what I had to go through to get this thing moving again. All right, so let's take a look at this segment here. Okay, fellas. So what I did was I took that pulley off, and I squirted a lot of lubricant all up in this area underneath where it rotates. We greased it from the other side, but that's more of the bearing underneath. And then I just put this piece back on so I could grab it with a vice grip. And look, see, now we got, she's moving fully. And then, now I think this belt is shot because if you put it back on, I don't know if you can see it, but right, by the time you pull that in, look, it's got like, look at that. I mean, I can pinch it. All right, that's not going to work. So I'm going to take this belt off. I got to put it back up on its butt. Sweet. It's actually not too bad. One of the ways you can tell is you put your finger in it, and you can see your finger. But it's got some other little qualities. All right, so it needs to be said, right? I have to take a moment out and do a segment on lubrication, right? Because I keep talking about lube here, lube there, and somebody's going to ask me, Arch, what are you using to lube the thing? No, you didn't bother to say anything. Yeah, I know, fellas. All right, I'm going to say it. All right, so I mentioned, and I often mention, this is a container. I need to make some more. It's usually a bit of gas, about 50% gas, 50% tranny fluid. And I'm actually using some older tranny fluid that I had from working on transmissions for a car a while back, and I had so much of it. But the newer transmission fluids are really good. Like if you want to mix some of the newest state-of-the-art tranny fluid, it's not all that expensive. It goes really far, and I can't tell you enough about it. There's actually a video on that I've got like two. I got a short and I got a regular video, so check that out. But suffice to say, what's inside of a transmission? Well, it's all highly machined surfaces like aluminum and steel that would rot, and then tons of O-rings. O-rings and O-ring style gasketing and clutch plates. And so it's a lot of detergent in it. It's an excellent lubricant. It will stave off oxidation, which leads to rust. And the way I have it set up with 50/50, it's not just a lubricant, but I use it as a release agent. I use it to get in there and loosen up things that are frozen or sticky. And that's like step one. And of course, you can use your favorite lube, whatever that is, spray lube. I also talk about chain waxes. When we get into chain wax or chain lube, this is cable and chain lube. So as I showed you really coming into this, the array of stuff that I like to use, I try to keep it simple. This stuff goes in, everything that I have essentially goes in with a vehicle. In other words, it will squirt in and go in deep, all of them. It'll get in deep like anything else that you might be using as a penetrant lube. But then that vehicle sort of boils off, and what you're left with, in this case, the chain lube, is like a gel. By the way, I got to check to see if I can get this again. At one point during the lockdowns and everything, it took me 6 months to get this. One can. And now when we talk a little bit more about like sort of dry lubing, right? Chain wax. This leaves like a paraffin wax, which is similar to a grease. But again, it goes in deep. And chains, by the way, they're under a lot of stress, and it's hard to get lubricant in and make it stay in there and not come off all over your socks and everything. And so what it does is it waxes up. It gets like a dry lube. So if I'm using more liquidy lubes, like I also show my oil squirter, right? Sometimes you got to put some oil in. People keep forgetting. They want to rely on all this like super PTFE resin technology and everything. People forget oil and grease. I can't tell you how many times I got this one video on, there's all these grease fittings on a lot of these transmissions of lawnmowers, and people telling me, no grease, you put in grease because you put grease, that's why you ruined it, it's no good. And meanwhile, this one that I do is a Toro, and there's a grease fitting right on the rear, and I'm like telling everybody, just ignore the grease fitting, and in fact, break it off and pack that area, seal it up with concrete. Grease, oil, simple stuff, that stuff. So the chain lube, which, let me put this away, and we put this over here. Chain wax, and of course, white lithium, right? Which is a mineral grease. Lithium is really, what is it like? I think it's a mineral. It's kind of like a metal, really. But either way, I forget. But it goes in with a penetrant, that boils off, and it leaves this very dry, like mineral type lubricant. That's another thing. You can follow up with that. Once you get things moving, if you've got something stuck, don't spray, things in there that are going to like harden up or act as a dry lube. Don't do it. It's not going to work. You're going to need to get it moving again, blow it with compressed air, rag it off, and then you can start using some of this other stuff. And if you want to play with high technology, fine. Forget about silicone. Silicone's not for stuff like this. Forget about the stuff that you spray in your locks, right? With those kinds of things. So there's really nanocarbon or graphite. It's not going to hold up. You need something a little bit more durable. Why is my shirt so bad? Anyway, this shirt just isn't fighting me with everything that I do. I'm like, I should have just changed it. Look at this. Look at this. If I pull it one way, if I got to pull it out. Arch is a little bit weird, right? Arch struggles with simple things in life. So I just wanted to show you that in terms of lubricant, just to give you a little assistance as to what I use. Because you know what? I got a squirt gun, I got grease, I got that thing, so that's 3, 4, 5, 6. How many more things do I need to stock, right? And then, of course, I do have other things, right? I use gear lube and a bunch of other stuff. It's like, oh my God, how many oils and lubes? And I'm trying to keep it simple for you fellas, but I don't know what to tell you, the world's complex. All right, let's get to the next segment. Now, there's still plenty of oil in the engine. It didn't all leak out because it can't get all out through the filler tube. And I did manage to stop the leaking at that grommet. I found an O-ring that basically fits in there in that groove area. But I had to stretch it to get in just a little bit. So I'm going to go shove this on and see what happens and let you know. But I think it would probably need a slightly larger O-ring to really fit just almost loosely. But let's find out. So that's the top, is the sealing edge. Let's see if the O-ring even stays on, if we can thread it down. Yeah, it threads down. All right. Well, I'll let you know. I mean, you can see it was all leaking down here. Let me get a rag and wipe that up. But I'll let you know, like next year. Well, it should seal it. And this is sealed down here. I'll try and find the grommet, replacement grommet for that. What I did is I cleaned it really good with some brake cleaner. And then, both the hole when I was doing an oil change and the tube. And then I kind of put a little RTV. It's got to be black. That's the only thing that's like fuel and oil resistant. And a little bit on the inside and a little bit around the tube, not a lot. And I pushed it in, and then there's a bolt up here. Bolted into place and just wiped it with my finger, and then walked away for a day and came back the next day, put oil in it. And so that's not leaking. Okay, like I said, let me go get a rag. So I'll let you know, fellas. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think if you get the correct grommet, and I'll search for it and I'll try to leave a link. If I forget, just, kick my cage, like I did to my dog. He says he doesn't really kick my cage. Look at him, I gotta go wipe all the crap out of your eyes. He's got this like light infection, and we keep giving him drops. I gotta give him some more. That's good enough. All right, it's out of the way. Snowblowers in the garage, or going in the garage. It's over by the garage. And it's enough room for me to get around, and it's stored. And I think that's, what else is there to do at this point, right? It's clean enough, it's stabilized, and it needs more work. And so if this is your situation, it's perfect. It's in the garage, I can, in the shed. I can bring everything else back in now and move forward with my day. It'd be nice if it was a little closer to the wall, but I don't want to keep fussing with it. I'm getting tired. So keep in mind, I'm doing these segments over time, past couple of years on 2 different machines, one of them being mine and one I sold sometime last year. It was a little newer one. And that one has a different dipstick because it has an overhead valve Briggs motor and it's a different size. So again, you're going to have to kind of, get the parts based upon your machine. They've improved these machines over the years, and of course, they're not being made anymore. So there are certain parts that are specific to your machine, the one that you have. I want to not forget and show you just briefly here. I'm pointing to the steering system and on the underside, and don't forget the spindles. And a lot of these have grease fittings, on the spindles for the front tires. And I show a little bit about just kind of pointing to the steering system from the underside. There's a lot you can get to from the underside. Now, that being said, right, I have a number of videos on these things. And if you look at the bottom section, right, this is the transmission. And the first thing is, get it clean. You need to clean these machines. And I have a completely separate video. I did a full cleaning, and then I pulled the boots back, and I went in there and I show how to properly lubricate and get all of this moving again, because when that starts to jam up, so you're going to want to check out that video on that little excerpt here of me kind of going through that. There's a lot to do underneath there, and it gets pretty involved. So that's really beyond the scope of this video, which is really just a generalized video. This video basically comes at the behest of one of the fellows that was watching, one of the other videos. And he says, Arch, maybe it'd be a good idea if you just did a simple, basic, quick video on how to store one of these for the season. And, conversely, it's really the same thing to get the machine, sort of up and running again. If you haven't stored it properly, get up and running again for the spring. Take care of these machines, fellas, because, they're not being made anymore, right? And although I complain about the transmissions kind of being cheesy and a big overgrown snowblower transmission, that said, these machines overall are built pretty well. And if you have a lawn about my size, a little bit bigger, I think it's a great machine to cover the property. 32-inch cut, generally speaking, goes in through gates and everything. I mean, how can you beat it? It's simple. So I think to close, in closing is, if you take care of it, right, it will take care of you. They'll last a long time. And again, I have other videos on going through the various issues and repairs. Between the two machines that I had just this past 2 years, the one that I sold, that one was newer, and there was a lot wrong with it that just came as, I think, just really poor to no maintenance. I mean, it didn't look bad. I think here's a little shot here of me when I got it. I don't know which one. So what's wrong with this one?
The deck wouldn't go.
So something's not right with the deck. It's a little prettier, this deck, than my deck.
It ran, it drove.
It's still got the boots on the transmission. Mine doesn't. I bought boots for mine. I'm going to try to get one, whichever one is in a little bit nicer shape, that I can just, get going and sell. That's sort of my plan. If I have to part the other one to do it. Different tires, too, I think.
That tire don't hold.
Yeah, well, it's got dirt in it, probably, and who knows. I'll put my stop leak in it. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Get a closer look at it in a little bit. But as soon as you get into it, you could see there was a flat tire, nothing was moving, we couldn't move the deck, the machine itself didn't want to move, then I got it moving. The engine just didn't want to run. It just really just total neglect. Like, people tend to use these things until they drop and they break them, and they never seem to ever want to bother to bring it into somebody like me or to do their own repairs and service. So if I could just inspire you fellas out there, or ladies too, these simple steps, you can definitely prevent and stave off a lot of the major issues that occur with these machines. And it includes any tractor, any lawnmower, really. If you take care of it, then you don't have to send it out to somebody. And like I said, they're not making any more. So you might as well take care of it. It really behooves you to get out there and keep it really clean. I think cleaning is probably the biggest thing, because that dirt will get inside, especially on the transmissions and the drivetrain. There's a number of bushings, plastic bushings, that are stuck in these shafts. And when they wear out, some of them are still available, some of them aren't. Some parts are not available. And I'm not the king of, Jackson or whatever his name is. I forget his name now. I mean, I'm not the king of these things, but I do fix them and repair them, and I have one. I got to do the boots on mine. That's coming up next. So stay tuned for something like that when I finally do it, which will have to be next year. I think they're worth a lot of money in the sense of, I see them all the time around $100 or $200, and they're broken. So I've gotten $400 for these things. So if you want to fix one up, if it's in good shape, you could probably get some good money. People need these machines. They're very comfortable, right? It's not just for Forrest Gump anymore, all right? I'll see you guys in the next one, and thanks for watching this episode of Archer's Garage.